Belgium knocked the US out in the 2014 World Cup. We've now been knocked out in the 2026 World Cup. Marco, yesterday, was it a bad night for the US, or was it this US side coming up a decent level team?
For me, it's they finally played a team that was good. And this is a Belgium side that I haven't been impressed with Belgium for years now. I think they had a golden generation that didn't match the level. But I think once USA played a team that actually had good attacking players, technical players, wanted to control the ball, you saw that they can't punch above their weight. They can't beat a team that's above them. Started the game with no composure, looking scared, couldn't make two passes. The midfield was completely outrun. And then it's the first time that they go down in a match in the World Cup, and then they don't have the character to get back. They make it 1-1. Their only chances was really on set pieces, had a few moments maybe at the beginning of the second half, but it was not a good showing, to Janelly's point. At least some of the other teams, Mexico, they went out with a fight. I think for me, the most disappointing thing is I'm not surprised that Belgium knocks USA out, not at all. But it's the way that they went out that I think leaves a bitter taste in our mouth that they can't go past the round of 16.
Yeah, look, Marco, I'm glad you went first because I actually can get into my woosah and get into my meditative state because I was pissed. And I think U.S. soccer fans should be pissed seeing what we saw. I'm going to cut through the BS. They got embarrassed, not just on national TV. They got humiliated on international TV. So every single person in the world just saw what we saw everything you saw. And ahead of the game, I thought Mauricio Pochettino, he set out his stall. And before the match, he said that we want to make it and reach a semifinal of the World Cup. In order to do that, you have to dream. He went from dreaming to living his worst nightmare. Watching how the team started, Belgium played with an intensity and an intent that the U.S. players looked rattled, they looked shell-shocked, and the best thing that could have happened was the hydration break, because the Malik Tillman goal comes in and around that time. And we've seen it before where teams at the World Cup, they start poorly. England was one of them against DR Congo. They get to the hydration break, and then some of the nerves, some of the wiser heads take over. It was as if, as soon as they got the goal, they thought they were back in the game, and Belgium kept hitting to another gear. And this was worrying for me to see against another European country. And no, Bosnia is not the level. And I know that a lot of Bosnians watch our shows, so this is not a dig at Bosnian fans, but Bosnia is not the level that the U.S. should be comparing itself to. Because when you look at the track record against European teams, the only two teams they've beaten in the last 16 times they played the European team has been Bosnia.
But also a semifinal is not something to compare it to. That's a complete pipe dream to think that you could get to a semifinal.
Janelly, what did you think of yesterday?
I think the biggest thing that stands out for me is now that I like kind of zoom out and really process the game is there was a complete lack of leadership and individual responsibility. I think you don't need the captain's armband to step up in a moment like that when your team needs somebody to guide you out of those difficult moments. And I don't recall any moment where somebody was like, brought the team together or was even like, come on, like lifting each other up, or you know what, especially for Tim Ream, he had a lot of mistakes last night. And it's difficult when you're the captain and you're expected to not make any mistakes. But in that moment, and I've been in that situation before, being the captain of a team and making a mistake that's determining the game, and nobody's been there to help lift me up. And I think he needed that in that moment. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're humans before we are football players, and it doesn't matter who you are on the field or how big you are, you need that. And there was nobody on this U.S. side to be that person for them. So it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter the quality that you have, it doesn't matter the team that you play on. We all need that at some moment, especially when your team is down by 2 or by 3. And I was really hoping to see that out of Pulisic, out of McKinney, and I don't think anybody did that. And what does that mean for the U.S. moving forward? You can't just be playing on a big team and think that that's enough. You need to take that responsibility and make something of it. It was very difficult to watch. As a football fan, it was very difficult to watch just mistake after mistake, and it was just in the little details for them.
Also, we waited so long. We've been talking about this buildup of playing a tournament on home soil, playing a World Cup on home soil. So to not get past the round of 16. And I think the bigger thing is it was a reality check. It was a reality check that USA is far from the level of actually competing. To be in the top 8, because they would have moved on from the quarterfinals, They're far from being in the top 8 of football, and a lot of it does come down to the group. The best national teams in the world, they form that group. They get up in the big moments. We had our worries defensively coming into the tournament. What was the conversation? It was how is USA going to be when they have to play against really good teams, attacking players? How's the defense going to look? How's the goalkeeper going to look? We got those answers now once they played a team that was ranked above them in the rankings.
Well, everybody, today we are live on YouTube, so you can comment down below all your thoughts and opinions. We'll be getting to them. One comment we've already had this morning is layup for Belgium.
Layup.
I think
Too much talk. Too much talk from the USA perspective.
You think so?
Too much. For me, I mean, the team has to do what they have to do, but we have to also remember where USA actually is. It's not just you beat Australia, you beat Bosnia. You have to beat big teams if we want to be able to talk and keep us in contention.
Yeah. Another comment here. US men's national team faltered under pressure. Pulisic didn't even break a sweat. Ream got dunked on. Fries kicked the ground instead of the ball. Should we talk about this golden generation then, Lahoud? Do you think they've missed their chance now?
Yeah, before we get to that, I really want to hit on something that Marco touched on about the round of 16, because I think the golden generation chat is something that is a just massive, bigger picture thing. But the round of 16, this has become a bit of a habit, and we've witnessed it covering the game. You've witnessed it as well, covering this beautiful game. There's this psychological thing, this psychological roadblock for the U.S. men's national team when it comes to this. And I'm going to be frank, when they come up against some of the big boys have gone belt to ass against the U.S. men's national team. They have taken off the belt like Michael Irving did for the University of Miami this past year when it came to college football, and they went, this cannot continue, because this was supposed to change under Mauricio Pochettino. And what I saw, and you went through every single one of those players, what I saw in that game was, from a psychological standpoint, they crumbled under the pressure. And for me, I saw the pendulum swing momentum-wise, because looking at some of the performers on the pitch today, Christian Pulisic was a ghost. Tyler Adams was pedestrian, and Tyler Adams is part of the engine room for the U.S. men's national team. Weston McKennie was getting bodied by Nicholas Raskin, who I thought was outstanding, by the way. Serginho Dest looked like he had no direction. You mentioned Tim Ream. Chris Richards had a really difficult game, and Alex Freeman is young, he's inexperienced. He looked that way. So every single player chose the worst possible day to have their worst possible game at this World Cup. But if you're the U.S. men's national team, this is a moment for reflection for me, because you came out, you got a coach who has raised the ambition of the men's national team, but yet the same results. So where do they go from here? That's a question that I can't answer today. If I could, I'd be getting paid the big bucks. I'd still be working for the Golazo network, big bosses, but I'd probably have a job with the U.S. Soccer. So this creates more questions than the answers we thought we were getting during the group stages.
Janelly, the Call It What You Want crew said the round of 16 was like an expectation for this US side in this World Cup. Do you think this was a success for the US this World Cup so far, or a failure?
It's difficult.
Because I think we all expected them to get to this stage.
The way they started the group stage against Paraguay, I was like, whoa, this team can make the semifinals, maybe, at least. It was very, very impressive. But then seeing the way that they went out, I wouldn't say it's a complete failure. I think the game itself against Belgium was a failure, but I think the performance in general at this World Cup, I think it was good. It wasn't great, it wasn't perfect, but I think it was good because we saw glimpses of what some of these players are capable of. I think for moments, I thought just the relationships between McKennie, between Balogun, between the players in the midfield, it was impressive and it was exciting. And it was the first time, I think, seeing a U.S. men's national team be exciting to watch.
Marco, for it to have been a success, would you have wanted the U.S. to beat a team like Belgium, a highly ranked team?
You have to beat a good team.
Yeah.
You have to beat a real team. You have to beat a team that you're not as good of. You have to over exceed the expectations. For me, it's bang average. I mean, this is what I expect. I thought this would happen, and you mentioned this golden generation. It's a label that was given to them. It's not a label that was earned. We have not seen that, unfortunately. It sucks to say, yes, a lot of the players are playing in Europe, in Champions League, they're performing, but when it all comes together, We brought in Pochettino. We brought this group together. It didn't look good coming into the World Cup. Then you're right. We had this match against Paraguay. The first 45 minutes, you beat Australia. The momentum is building. But then when it came to it, when the bright lights were on, when you had to overachieve. And by the way, you didn't lose. Context is always important. You didn't lose to France. You lose to France in the round of 16. You have a bad draw. Okay, fine. Guys, we lost to a Belgium that it's the worst Belgium of the last decade. It's the worst Belgium of a decade, and they lost to them. If we're just saying the truth. So we have to be humble, learn, see what happens with Pochettino, what players are going to come into the squad, but we can't act like this is a success for me.
I think if the U.S. had lost with a very good performance, with the fight, with quality, with not so many mistakes, we would have been having a different conversation.
How Mexico lost went out against England.
It's a good point.
Yeah, look, 2002, that 02 team lost to a Germany side, albeit in the quarterfinal, and they put some respect back on U.S. soccer. But what I'm concerned about now is you flip it forward, because you can't go back and replay it. Well, I mean, you can't go back in theory and replay the game.
Are there any articles?
Article 28 coming up. But when you look ahead to the next World Cup, this is not a young group anymore. 2022, they're a young group. This is a group that was entering their prime. The next World Cup, you look at some of the ages of some of the players, this is a completely different dynamic. Okay, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Christian Pulisic. This is their current age group. You flip it now in 4 years, the core group of this team, they're going to be in their 30s. So there's going to be a lot of question marks about who do you bring in. And we've seen national teams, Marco, and Janelly, you've seen this as well, where there's always this refreshment when it comes to cycles, when it comes to what happens between now.
Do you think they have that? Do you think they'll be able to?
I think we're going to find out at the next Gold Cup. This is where some of the players, I think of Xavier Gozo. We think of some of the Red Bull players that have really made a mark in Major League Soccer. You think of maybe, is this a time to throw Kevin Sullivan? He's the wonder kid in Major League Soccer that everyone keeps talking about. Is this a time to throw him into the next Gold Cup? So if you're Mauricio Pochettino and you are still the manager or the head coach of the U.S. men's national team, you got to find the next crop and the next group of players coming up, or else we'll be having the same conversation in 2030.
If this were the end for Mauricio Pochettino as the U.S. head coach, Marco, would you consider his tenure a success?
For me, it would be hard to say that it's a success. I mean, if think about it, we looked at the graphic of what the last teams have been able to do. I mean, I think he had an incredible buy-in. I think tactically we saw things from this U.S. national team. If we look at the World Cup as a whole, that I don't remember growing up watching the team and looking at them tactically the way that they lined up. But it's hard to say with a stamp of approval, yeah, it was a success. But do you bring in another coach? Does he actually get you out of a round of 16? That's also difficult. I look at the players as well, and you look at them and say that there has to be responsibility shared. So it's not just on Pochettino to decide if it's a success or not.
Lahoud, do you think the same way?
Yeah, excuse me, I'm with you. Very few times I'm lost for words, and maybe this team and their performance last night's a big reason. But I think you hit the nail right on the head with this. What Mauricio Pochettino has done is the first thing he did, he exposed and shined light on something that needed to be addressed, which was the fact that the culture needed to change with the U.S. men's national team. But now, if you're U.S. soccer, the next step that you need to do is you need to make sure that you can retain Poch in this role as head coach, because he built something. And now if Poch wants to stay, and I don't think if you ask anyone in U.S. soccer, it'll be not for a lack of, do we want Poch? It'll be, does Poch want to be a part of this project? And that's where you get your best negotiators, you get your best contract people, you get your best people to pitch this project, and you make it enticing for him, because he is the most important next piece for U.S. soccer.
I agree with you on that. I think it's difficult to build a system if you're constantly changing the direction of the team. I think if they want to see a successful U.S. team for the next World Cup, I think keeping Pochettino is the best bet, because he's allowed them to play with freedom. I think he has brought out the best in some of these players, and he also believes in players that maybe before didn't believe in themselves. But like you mentioned, it's about that individual responsibility. Do these players want that? Does Pulisic want that responsibility? I don't think he does. He's 27. It's likely that he will be captain at the next World Cup. But when he came off the pitch, he had his head down. Yeah, he was injured, but he had his head down and he was like this the whole time. And it's like, your team needs their leader. Your team needs Captain America. Where is that responsibility? Where is that desire to say, okay, I'm going to be that person. I can't do it on the pitch, but I'm going to do it off the pitch. And that's not up to Pochettino.
You were at the game yesterday. I just want to get your initial thoughts, just as a journalist, from your point of view of this loss yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it was massively disappointing. I think it was, I don't want to say it was surprising, but it was the first real reality check that this team had in this tournament, where they had to face a team that was a top European side. And the beginning of this tournament, they were allowed to kind of build up the good vibes, to get the country behind them, which was good and important. And it was the point of this tournament, right? To try to bring new people into the sport, to entertain them. And they did that job, and they did it well. You know, I'll always remember that win over Paraguay for what the atmosphere is like and the reaction to it around the country. But this game last night was the moment that the tournament was really about, because they had a chance to change people's minds going forward. And instead, I think it went the other way, right? I think people have said they are exactly who we thought they were. We're not going to buy in on this anymore. You know, what we saw at the beginning was an illusion. And that's the hardest part to cope with coming out of this tournament, is that, you know, there is still so much more that has to be done to grow this program, to grow the sport in this country. And this moment, this 2026 World Cup, a home World Cup, the chance to show where the U.S. has gone, is a missed moment now. It's a missed opportunity on so many different levels. And the hope is that not too much damage was done, that maybe there are little glimmers of that belief that were instilled to people here and there along the way. But really, my hope is that this opens an opportunity to kind of look in the mirror more for the leadership around American soccer, and to really study what they need to do to help this sport grow.
Paul, I said it before, we have to stop meeting like this, because I feel like it's been 2-3 days that we're bringing bad news or crazy news to the U.S. soccer public and to the world. But all jokes aside, I echo what you said. You can feel the doom and gloom, or the mood shattering, you know, just sense of what we just saw against Belgium. But when we flip it forward to 4 years from now, I mean, so many people have labeled this the golden generation, but at the next World Cup, this so-called golden generation, they're going to be older. So what might this group look like in 4 years' time? Because I'm not filled with as much hope as I was prior to kickoff last night, seeing the age that some of these players are going to be at.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think you can look at the Belgium team and kind of get an idea of where this national team program is going now in the next 4 years and the 4 years after that. You have the remnants of Belgium's golden generation on the field last night, and then you have the young players who are coming through and maybe seizing control and saying, it's our turn. And that's what U.S. soccer is going to need, because the biggest stars of this team are going to be in their 30s in the next World Cup. And so you can't count on Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams and those players to be the featured players the same way they were this time around. Not to say that they don't have a role, they're not important, but it is valuable to start to see whether or not some other players can come through and reinforce this program. And, you know, whether that is the players we already know, like Malik Tillman and Flo Balogun, who are newer to this program, newer to the senior program, playing in their first World Cup, who can still have a big role, or whether it's younger players coming through whose names we don't even know yet, maybe, or, you know, is it players like Gozo and MLS who can add to it? But I think we realistically have to talk about, you know, what needs to be done, not for the World Cup in 4 years, but even looking beyond that. Because I think what we saw last night is there's still a long way to go for American men's soccer to be able to compete with the world's best. This was the quote-unquote golden generation in their prime at home in a World Cup, and they still couldn't get past the round of 16. This doesn't feel like a quick fix type of situation. You know, Poch talking about linear growth and nonlinear growth, you know, usually that's the kind of language you use when you're talking about a longer term project. And as much as we hoped it was closer and wanted to believe it was closer, it's not. And there's a lot of hard work left to do to get there.
Paul, we've been talking about how we saw a major lack of leadership in last night's match, a lack of individual responsibility and like that individual desire to pick the team up, to lift the team up. to guide the team in the right direction, especially in difficult moments. And I'm talking about within the pitch, inside the field, in those moments, because you can't depend on Pochettino or your coach to always be the person to solve the problems for you. I don't think Pulisic has it in him to be the Captain America that everybody wants him to be. Who do you think are those players that should step up and take that leadership role?
Yeah, I mean, there always have been certain personalities in this team that have played that role, and it's never been Christian, right? Tyler Adams has always been sort of the vocal leader of this team and the lead by example guy in the locker room. And to be fair, Tyler also did not have a great game last night. And so where that responsibility falls now are many different places. But I agree with what you guys were talking about earlier in regards to Mauricio Pochettino. I think whether you keep Pochettino or not, it is critical that you bring in a coach who's able to keep in place some of the things that Pochettino has been changing around the federation. The idea of who's in charge, what control looks like, how people value call-ups, the ability to choose whether or not you get called up or not, the approach to being with the national team in general. You need somebody who's got the power to say, this is the way it is, I'm in charge, the power stays with the people it should be with and not with the players. So there is the on-field responsibility part of it. But as this program moves forward, I think that cultural change that Pochettino instituted in a relatively short amount of time is the most important factor moving forward with this national team, to make sure people understand that being called in is a privilege. It's not something that you can just kind of toss to the side or think that is always going to be there. And if you lose that mentality, then you're taking more steps backwards from even the levels of progress that were made in this World Cup cycle.
Paul, I know it's fresh, but with all the context you have, your feeling, do you think he stays? Do you think Pochettino stays as the U.S. coach?
I would be surprised if he stays in the long term. I could see him maybe signing the extension and being around for a little bit, but he has signaled pretty clearly publicly that he has a desire to coach in the Premier League again. And I feel like there is some part of it that has to be considered as to whether or not U.S. Soccer wants to bring in a coach where for 4 years, they go through that cycle again of every time a job opens up, Pochettino's name is a candidate, and he's doing interviews where he's talking about his desire to go back to the Premier League. There has to be a commitment to be around for 4 years to try to build something. And it's okay that Pochettino might want to go back to the Premier League. I understand it. It's the highest levels of the game. And I actually think that in what he did coming into the program, what he changed culturally, was really, really important to the potential lasting legacy of his time with the national team. But I'm not sure if he really wants to be bought in for the next 4 years. And that's something he's going to have to determine.
Paul, I'm going to ask you to put your technical director hat on. Obviously, Matt Crocker went to the Saudi Arabian Federation. So you are now the technical director of U.S. Soccer and the U.S. men's national team. If not Poch, then who?
Yeah, man, this is a really tough one. This is a really tough one because there aren't that many personalities who can come in and do what Pochettino did, which is to say, I am the biggest name in this locker room. I have coached people at the very highest levels of the game. You need to kind of take a backseat to me as the coach, right? Like, that is not an easy task to go find in global soccer. Do they go to people who have been involved in national teams in the past? Somebody like a Gareth Southgate. Do you look to the club game again? Wherever it comes from, I think it has to be a bigger name again. You set a standard with Pochettino, but you've also set kind of the reset of the culture that needs that big personality in the head coaching position. I just don't think that you can back down from that at this point. So when we talk about the next coach, I think you have to start talking about some of the bigger names in the sport. And maybe Roberto Martinez is another example of that type of name who's been involved in big-time national teams, understands the 4-year cycle, the rhythms of it, and will be committed to doing that.
On a brighter note, are you happy to be gone, go see your wife and kids after a month on the road?
I'm very happy and hopeful that I get to go see my wife and kids for a couple of days before I go back out on the road, but I'm not counting chickens yet. I got to wait and see where I'm going from here. And maybe I can watch a World Cup game with my son, Ben, who's very obsessed with the tournament right now. And let's not forget that, the U.S. may be out, but there are a lot of people around this country that are still going to be watching this tournament, still going to be enjoying what's
That's
happening,
right.
still going to be inspired by what's going on the field. It might not be Americans, but it'll be watching Erling Haaland and Mbappe and Messi and all the big names and big teams that are still alive.
You could learn a lot watching those other teams.
Thanks for watching this video from Morning Footy. For all news and insights regarding leagues around the world like EFL, Serie A, and all UEFA competitions, both men's and women's, don't forget to sign up for Paramount Plus.